Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth week of Drawing One Art 204. This is the middle of the term, so it's time has passed quickly, don't you think? Or maybe you don't. I hope you do. This week is this particular part is going to be pretty basic and pretty short, simply because you've finally reached the end of dealing with all these different shapes, complex shapes, conical shapes, spheres, uh, rectangles, you name it, you've dealt with it. And so this week, we're going to be studying the final shape in all of these different shapes, and that's the conical shape. The cone is, you know what a cone looks like. It's pointed and then goes down or falls down into a circle or a sphere. And you do find cones and conical shapes in nature, not as regularly, of course, as you do rectangles and cylinders and spheres. I think I got them all right. Yeah. But I want to talk first about just a little bit about drawing your backgrounds in graphite. Now, I mentioned to quite a few of you this past week when I was doing grades that it would probably be a good time to go ahead and switch from charcoal to graphite pencil. And if you're still using newsprint, switch over to the Bristol board. It's a whiter, brighter, smoother texture. Well, texture is practically nil, but it's much smoother to draw on, and it takes the graphite pencil quite nicely. It also takes the charcoal as well, but a lot of you have mentioned that the charcoal just is so difficult to control. So let's go ahead and switch, if you haven't, to graphite and the white Bristol board. When you put your blends down, or let's say you want to build your background in graphite, um, the smoothness of your blend will depend on how smoothly you apply that pencil. Now, if you scribble or if you do this, and I know why you do this, and usually I see this kind of background in the second or the third drawing. And it's because you're tired and you've sort of run out of steam in drawing backgrounds and drawing period. And so the first drawing usually is so lovely and so perfect, or it's the last drawing, but usually the middle gets this kind of treatment for the background. No amount of blending will ever make the scribbled application of a pencil look smooth. You can try with your finger, with a cloth, with the paper stump. It's always going to have this line um, sort of shadowing everything that you blend. So when you blend, try to stay, first of all, start dark and then go to light. It's just easier for your hand to do. Obviously, if you're left-handed, as you draw this or as you lay down smooth lines, move that paper or move a cloth over what you've already done, or you'll of course you'll smear it. And right-handers do it too. So always have either a cloth, or I would recommend just a piece of paper um, that doesn't have any scribbles or anything on it. Um, and this looks like a perfect blend. It starts really dark And yeah, you can see some striations there, but this is a nice clean blend. You could go in with, again, your finger, your cloth, maybe a microfiber cloth or a paper stump, and you could make some just tremendously beautiful blends with kind of this light touch for blending. When you use the paper stump, use it in the same up and down or black or back and forth application, the same as you applied your graphite pencil. And do not press down hard as you blend, because if you do, it'll just rough up the texture of the paper and it'll make it look choppy. The lighter the touch, the smoother your blend will be. And here's an example of a nice smooth blending with a paper stump. Now make the paper stump work for you instead of against you. If you've used it to the point where it doesn't have a point to it, or it's sort of rounded at the end, then get an X-Acto knife or get a blade of some kind. You can even use small scissors and trim it down to the size you want to make your stroke for a background. It's easy to do. You're not going to waste money or, ruin your paper stump because they're cheap, and you can always get another one for less than, usually you can get them for like 40 cents, 35, 40 cents. And all they are twisted paper that is twisted, and you can peel them too, by the way, if you didn't know that. But I always use them with an X-Acto knife, and I trim my paper stump to fit what I want to essentially uh, look like, what it I want it to look like when it's blended like this. Of course, it's going to have some texture. It's going to have some obvious lines, but it's a hand drawing. You don't want it to be perfect. Um, so just keep that in mind. Use that paper stump and also use those erasers. You can cut them up. I mean, I make little tiny slivers of eraser when I'm putting in, straight and white lines. You'll see how good and how helpful that will be when you start drawing glass and metal and you want those real finite areas of white. The paper stump or those pink pearl eraser or the plastic eraser are your best friends. So working with the worksheet, I've had some people have some real difficulties with PowerPoint. And PowerPoint is not the most ideal uh, place to add your images. This class would needs to be rewritten and something a little more user friendly would be great to be able to use. But for now, you're kind of stuck using PowerPoint. Now, if you choose not to use PowerPoint, you can just, open up a Word document, create a Word document, and drop those drawings in, and that's perfectly fine. Just make sure that you have a really good either scan or shot with a digital camera or your mobile device or your tablet, that image is lit brightly, very sharply, and focused. I have several students that cannot seem to get a really good shot. Um, and if you can't, and I totally get if you don't have a scanner, uh, scanners aren't that expensive, but who am I to send you out to go buy something? I would never do that. Um, but you can get a pretty good shot from your phone. just square it up, make it look great. If you have to, and it's, say, midday, not a lot of, cast shadows in the light that you have, the natural light, take it outside and shoot it. Um, but when you shoot it, then when you want to put it in that PowerPoint document, take those little green and gold and little different FPOs or for position only images. Just delete those and drop your drawing into that place, and it'll be just fine. Also, you can save your image as a JPEG, as a BNG, as a PDF. Probably the easiest is the JPEG or the PNG, and then just put it in PowerPoint. Or again, if you just want to make a Word document, put it there. Just be sure and label what it is. Normally, I can look at what you've done and go, okay, I know which this is, but sometimes I can't. So just be sure and save each image as they are named in that PowerPoint document. This is a typical cone shape. Um, and this is drawn, I even if I say so for myself, for fairly nicely. And this is a very common view of a cone. Again, they're light wraps around the spherical sort of side or shape of the cone, and it ultimately comes to a very fine point at the top. But remember, your wrapping light will give you a lighter area here. Then you've got your really dark area about 3/4 around. Then it becomes lighter, lighter, lighter. And then you've got your hot spot or your direct light right there, about 1/4 around. And then, of course, you've got a little bit of a dark area here because remember, the light comes in, hits right here. It's going to drop off back here. And of course, it's going to drop off back here. So if you'll remember that, you won't have any issues with the cone. And if you want to use a straight edge and say you have a spherical shape that you use, go for it. That's perfectly fine. You can blend either softly, like this, or you can use hard lines. I don't mind either one. Again, these are drawings. These are not super reality based. These are different views of cones. You're going to be working in perspective in your capstone project in this class. So when I give you these perspective-like drawings, I think I've given you some rectangle, spheres, cones. What am I leaving out? Rectangle, spheres, cones. Um, Oh, and cylinders. Hang on to those because they will help you in your perspective drawing at your capstone. Now, here's all four of your predominant shapes in three-dimensional perspective. If you put a horizon line, let's say with this particular cylinder, put it right about here, you could draw everything down to a vanishing point and it would look just perfectly fine. And if you want to practice that, you might practice it a time or two. Perspective can get really weird. I also gave some of you a grid when we were studying the rectangles. I will include that for everyone in your grade packet this week or with your grades, just to make sure everyone has it. That helps so much. And what you can do is you can take it and enlarge it, or if you take it and it's digital, you can enlarge it and then print it out the size that you want it. And of course, if you're drawing on Bristol, you're not going to be able to trace, but you can certainly look at it and it will really help your perspective drawing. Complex shapes. You're going to have a still life of basic shapes like this, but also complex shapes. These are very basic. Some of these, I've drawn, some of these other people have drawn. And you're probably beginning to recognize some of my style. I tend to smush things a lot, and I like super realism. So um, that anyway, remember that you can adjust, you can curve, you can turn, you can, the sphere you're not going to be able to do too much with because it's equidistant all the way around. The rectangle you can put on the edge, you can tilt it. The cylinder you can turn it over, lay it down, and of course the cone you can do the same thing. Now, a lot of you have asked, do I have to have three different shapes in a still life? No, not necessarily. This is a still life. And if you look, you've got all kinds of shapes in here. Here's a rectangle. Um, you've obviously got a big old sphere here. Uh, you've got some spheres down here that also spill into a nice cylinder. The only thing you really don't have um, is a cone. But even like in this area, you could probably add a cone. This is very close to, this is the filament, inside a light bulb. You could certainly add a cone down here, and that would be your still life image. And here's another light bulb just to give you, this one is drawn just with a number 2 pencil. I don't want you to do that because look how bad it looks. I want you to have things like this. See how bright and lustrous that drawing is? You have dark darks and white whites. And these whites here, uh, you get those by erasing back to that white paper. You don't have white pencils. uh, Another cylinder and a cone to form common objects. Is this a still life? Well, sure. You've got these curvatures here. You've got the classic cone. You've got some rectangles and rounded spherical shapes. Of course it is. What about this? Of course, you've got spheres, a cylinder, and then you've got this pitcher, which has, segmentations that could easily be like this could be part of a rectangle, curvature here. I don't think you have to work as hard as some of you work to put together a still life. Make it everyday objects uh, like this. Just every day, put your basic lines down. You can always go in here and erase all these basics. But if everything is squared and in perspective and looks this good, you're going to have a great drawing. And forget all these lines and stuff. They're there to help you. And then when you're done with them, you don't have to have them anymore. You clean them up. This particular artist, he does amazing work, as you can see, but he always segments or breaks his images down into basic shapes. It's just so much easier that way. And he's got a lot of guidelines here. You see that? Just everywhere. Then he's going to come back in here. Now, this is a style that he wanted to achieve, but ultimately, he could come back in here and erase all these guidelines, especially in here, and you could see the sort of the icy part of the Coca-Cola. Uh, Beautiful work. He does wonderful work. Um, Another one. This is pretty one-toned. There's just sort of a one-tone image here. You could darken this up and it would be perfect. You've got your background like a tile setting in the kitchen. These are pretty light. You could certainly darken them up if you wanted to, or you could leave them just like this. They work just perfectly fine. What do you think about this background? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Um, Remember, you can use cross hatching, and I think it looks just wonderful. You know, you're going to leave some areas where different types of cross hatching will cross each other. You don't want that. So there's no cross hatching in here or here, really not in here too much, but there certainly is in here and then all in this area as well. So it's a nice, different way to approach a drawing. This is by J.D. Hilberry. He is a neo-realist. Basically, this looks as real as you can get without a camera. Um, and I wanted to show you how it's very, very non-sketchy. Everything looks very solid. It looks very realistic, and he uses a lot of darkness, as you can see. Darkness will really help the realism of your images. Is this a still life? One kind of object with several pieces of that object? Technically, yeah, this is a still life. You've got all kinds of different basic shapes here. Now, normally people want something other than just one big shape. You want to put little parts of other things here. But if this was turned in as a still life, of course it would be fine. There's so much going on here. Uh, Very definitely would match as a still life. And then again, neo or hyper realism. Even with such realism, you can still go into a a not just a shaded, but a segmented, a sketched background, foreground. Not much sketchiness here. And you can almost feel that in your hand. It's so beautifully drawn. Um, so you can approach your drawings either way, either have solids or have cross hatchings. Uh, you have so much choice in building these illustrations. And next week, we start on actual stuff like glass and metal and fibers, drapery, that kind of thing. So I think you'll really enjoy that. At least I hope you do. So have a good week and take care. Bye.